Hey, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can start adopting liquid glass in your Expo application and do it in a way that doesn't break older iOS versions or other platforms like Android, iPad, web, you name it. We're going to be looking at the React conference application that I've been building with Kadi and the team. It's a real example of how to bring the latest iOS 26 features while still making sure the application feels great everywhere. Along the way, I'll show you how to take advantage of platform-specific features so your application feels like a first-class citizen on each device. That includes liquid glass support for iOS, context menus, native tabs, and even some Expo UI components that use Jetpack Compose for Android and Swift UI for iOS. We'll also check out the new Expo Glass Effect package, and I'll walk you through how to build Fallbacks so your application still looks good on older iOS versions and Android devices. By the end, you'll know how to start experimenting with these native specific features using Expo and Expo UI, and how to keep your application stable across every platform. Let's dive in. Alright, so let's take a quick look at the application. And by the way, if you want to experiment with it, you can download it from the App Store or Play Store. I'm going to leave the links in the description, including the GitHub repo. This is actually open source and you can inspect the code. So this is like an overview of how the application looks on different devices and different iOS versions. On the left, I have this iPhone 16 Pro that is using iOS 18. And on the right, I have the iPhone Air using iOS 26. And at the very right, I have my Android Pixel 8. And by the way, this is a real device. You can see it here on screen. And for those who are wondering, how can I control my real Android device here? It's actually Android Studio. So if you open any project on Android Studio, on the right, you can find these running devices. And at the moment, I have it as window, but you can usually view it like this. This is the default, and you can select different devices here. So yeah, I just connected my Android. Of course, you need to enable developer mode. And once you do that, you can open Android Studio, any project. It doesn't really matter. Then you can just go here and say view mode equal to window. And then you can minimize the rest. And this is how I managed to demo and test. Something really cool about Android is that you can even control the device here, which is awesome. I wish we could do that for iOS as well. So the first thing that I want to talk about is navigation. This application uses native tabs introduced on Expo Router version 6. And this is what you can expect while using Expo Router native tabs. On the left, on older iOS versions, you'll get the default behavior with the blur background. And this is fully native. And just because this is native, we get out of the box some features like scroll to top. So for example, if I press on the speakers tab, it's going to scroll up. And then on iOS 26, it looks really nice on light mode and dark mode. The liquid glass effect adapts, so you don't need to worry about that. It also adapts to dark mode. And then we have the same behavior. So if I press again, we're going to have scroll to top and pretty cool stuff like that. Now you might be wondering, what about Android, right? So for Android, Expo Router implements native tabs as well. And you can expect the same native tabs that you would see in any other Android native application. So this is how it looks. Okay. One thing about Android native tabs is that if you long press, you'll see like the name of the screen. Cool thing that I'm using the running devices window is that I can just hover and it will show me the name of the screen. So in case someone is wondering, you cannot use liquid glass on Android. The reason for that is because Apple invented liquid glass only for iOS devices. So this is how it looks in action. Now let me show you the code. So this is how the native layout looks like. Inside the app, we have all the routes and screens. So let me just go to the layout and scroll down to where we are defining the stack. This is basically our navigation. And first of all, we have our tabs. And then we also have some screens that are defined as form sheet or modal, depending on various things that I'm going to be talking about in a moment as well. So we have the speaker details screen, and then we also have the talk details. So when I press on one of these talks, we navigate to this screen. This is a form sheet, as you can see here, and this is how it looks. So super cool, super nice. And let's see how this behavior works across different platforms. So on older iOS versions, if I go and navigate to the same screen, I'm going to be using a normal modal. The reason for that is because the form sheet, it's only it has only this background blur effect on iOS 26. So we wanted to take advantage of that. That's why we're only enabling this when liquid glass is available. And on Android, we get the default navigation view, as you can see there. So before I dive into more details about how to tweak around the settings of the navigation and things depending on the platform and iOS version, I want to talk about Expo UI. For those who don't know, I actually made a video here on the channel showing you what is Expo UI, but basically it's a set of components fully native that you can use for Android and iOS, and they leverage the native platforms. For example, for iOS, it uses Under the Hood, Swift UI, and for Android, it uses Jetpack Compose. You can simply import it and use things like this select, or like this context menu at the top right. This is for iOS. But for Android, we also have the native Jetpack Compose primitives like this picker as well. Now, at the time that I'm recording this video, Expo UI is in beta for iOS, and for Android, it is in alpha. But still, you can use some components. Like in this case, we are using the picker for Android, and this is fully native as well. Now, the implementation of each API is a bit different, so we need to be a little bit careful, at least at the moment, if you want to take advantage of these components. So the advantage of using Expo UI is that you get the instant native feel depending on the platform. So for example, if I open this bottom sheet and then toggle this bookmark, this is actually a Swift UI button that has the liquid glass effect, and it has the prominent effect. So there's actually no way to do this right now in React Native, in plain React Native. So you would need to create a native component or native button and do it yourself, or just use Expo UI. So this is an example, and here's another example. You can just use the button I'm going to show you in a moment, and it comes with haptic feedback and everything else. Now for Android, you can use a button if you want from the alpha version, or you can just fall back to the default React Native button, or depending on your style, or just use a pressable, right? So let's say that you want to use the prominent glass effect on iOS. So let me show you how you can do that without breaking any other platform. Let's go back to the code. I'm going to show you the bookmark component, for example. So this is the bookmark component. As you can see, looks pretty simple, pretty nice, just a simple component. But on the left, if you pay attention, we have a bookmark.ios.tsx. In case you didn't know, you can use file extensions with the name of the platform that you want to support. So in this case, we have these two with the same name, but for iOS, we are adding the extension .ios. That means that the code inside this component is only going to run for iOS. And then for any other platform, we are going to run this component, which at the end of the day is just using the regular pressable from React Native gesture handler. It's using Expo vector icons and just the same stuff that you would normally use on a React Native component. But because we want to take advantage of the new liquid glass effect and Expo UI components, we can create a bookmark.ios.tsx, and we know that this is going to run only for iOS. And then in this file, we can start importing Expo UI. Like in this case, I'm using this frame, and this is coming, as you can see here, from Swift UI, meaning that this is only going to run for iOS. But as you can see, this is React code. You are familiar with this syntax, and we're doing some validations, but everything here is gonna be only for iOS. Now, I want to show you as well this header button that I'm using all over the application. So for example, when I open this bottom sheet, this close button, or this bookmark button, are this component called header button. And this is another component that is being implemented specifically for iOS and then the rest of the platforms, okay? So let's take a look at the header button iOS, which is actually the one that I'm using here. This button is using a bunch of stuff from Expo UI. By the way, if you want to learn more about Expo UI, I'm going to leave the other video in the description, but I'm just going to be explaining how am I using it right now, not how it works, right? So I'm importing all these from Expo UI. Basically an image button, and then I'm creating my custom button here. This is only SwiftUI stuff, and this is going to be rendering a native button. And as you notice, I'm using the variant glass, and you can change like glass prominent, and you'll get the native effect. Now, let me show you an example of how the different button styles look like in SwiftUI. So I have this other project that is called Expo UI Playground that I created for me. And I'm gonna leave it in the description in case you're curious, but this is how it looks. So for example, I'm using here different components from Expo UI. And by the way, don't pay attention to this big button at the top. Right now, there is a bug on React Native screen. So that's why it looks like that. But anyways, yeah, for example, we have this context menu. We have this different size of the button that you can use. And these are glass buttons, right? And we can use them to stay close to the native implementation of iOS. And now with the liquid glass is more important than ever. Let me just quickly show you here other views that I've created using only SwiftUI. I even created a to-do app, and this is how it looks. So all these components that you can see here quickly, like sliders, switches, stickers, context menus, you can use all these from Expo UI just by importing from here. Like a context menu, it's never been easier. So that's actually one thing that I want to highlight, that context menus or buttons should be things that you can start adopting. You don't have to, adopt everything. You're gonna be saying, okay, now I have to create a different file for each platform. That's not the case. It's just for the things that you want to take advantage of the native primitive API. Right now, to support liquid glass and keep your application modern, using these native primitives for iOS is very important. This is how you can do it. Just create a file with the extension and then just use it. And you can import it without adding the extension, right? You might be wondering, do I have to say .ios? You could, but you don't have to do that because the Expo project is going to identify that the application is being compiled on iOS. So by default, it's going to resolve this iOS specific folder. And then for other platforms, if we take a look at Bootmark, it's going to use the fallback for other platforms with, the regular stuff. Okay, so that's how you can take advantage of native primitives right now and enjoy of liquid glass in your application. And just to let you know, for example, this day picker, fully native, it's using liquid glass, as you can see here. And it works on older versions natively. And then on the right, we are using this Jetpack Compose version. This is the alpha version, so I wouldn't recommend using it at the moment. We are working on the beta version to make it more scalable, but same idea. For example, let's take a look at the picker, which is a great example. It's using actually native implementation for Android and iOS. So if I go here, you can see that you don't really need to pass here .android, right? We could if we want, but the rule is that you have to have just the regular name, like daypicker.tsx, and then the platform specific that you want to target, right? So the daypicker is gonna be used for Android, and same thing, but in this case, we are importing a picker from Expo UI Jetpack Compose. This is for Android only, and for iOS, we're gonna be using the picker, but from SwiftUI. Right? So this is how you can start adopting these APIs at the moment. We are not sure how this is going to look like in maybe 2 or 3 SDK releases. We have some ideas of unifying these APIs so that you don't have to create these 2 files at the moment, but some things change depending on the platform, right? So SwiftUI is a completely different framework from Jetpack Compose. Although both have pickers, some properties might change and they might look different on each platform. So at the moment, I would say this is the best way to take advantage of these native primitives using, React code. This is pretty simple to implement. Just import. You don't need to do anything else. Just import and use it. No configuration, just install the dependency and use it. And you will get the native implementation. You can learn more, of course, in our documents if you're curious about a specific thing. Okay, that brings me to the next point, which is liquid glass, right? Apple introduced this liquid glass effect. Everyone knows at this point, but it's actually not that easy to adopt it because we still have to maintain older iOS versions unless you are targeting only iOS 26. But it's very important to be careful when you are implementing this because you still need to write some fallbacks and properties based on if liquid glass is available or not. And that brings me back to the native tabs. Yeah, actually, this is a pretty cool example. We have many validations, and the one that you're going to see a lot is going to be this is liquid glass available function. And if we take a closer look, this is coming from Expo Glass Effect, which is a new Expo module that we created to make it easier for you to detect if liquid glass is available or not. And on top of that, you can import other pretty cool things from glass effect, like a glass view, and you can create a custom glass effect view for iOS 26. Okay, so keep in mind this is iOS 26, but also keep in mind that most of your users are going to be able to have liquid glass at some point because the iOS 26 update, at least for glass effect, is going to be compatible all the way back to iPhone 11 and up. So I would say that 90% of the people that use iPhone are going to be using liquid glass. So this is how you can apply different properties depending on if liquid glass is available or not. One of my favorite ones is using a form sheet when liquid glass is available. And the reason for that is because it looks super cool. So if you open this form sheet, you can barely see there the background, maybe in dark mode, and you get like this highlight, right? And you can start doing pretty cool stuff with this. For example, we added a shader. When you scroll all the way down, we turn on this shader using React Native Skia. So imagine that we're combining React Native Skia with Expo UI, with the new form sheet, and we can start creating these new UIs that previously was nearly impossible to do, or you would need to install like 4 or 5 dependencies and join everything. I don't know, it was like a lot of work. And now at this point, it's just a matter of passing the form sheet presentation with the detents, right? And for other iOS versions that don't have liquid glass available, you can just use a modal. And for other platforms, just modal, right? Maybe I could even simplify this a bit more. But yeah, this is how it looks, right? So the next thing that I want to just highlight is the fallbacks, right? We already talked about that in the components, but I also want to let you know, in case you didn't know, that you can also create routes or screen extensions inside the app folder. Expo Router lets you use, for example, let's create just a dummy layout.ios.tsx, right? And you can have a fully iOS implementation here. You can use either iOS or Android or web or native to target iOS and Android. Maybe you want to just leave this one for web. That's totally possible. And then you can start doing any native stuff that you need to do here. And that's pretty much all I wanted to mention in this video, guys. I think it's very important to keep in mind that adopting liquid glass, it's cool, but you have to keep an eye on older iOS versions. Although almost everyone is going to be upgrading soon, you still have to, you still have like 10% of users that maybe are going to be stuck on iOS 18. So keep that in mind. Another very important thing that I want to leave you with is that Expo UI for iOS, you're going to find that is better at the moment that the Android implementation. The reason for that is because we were focusing on iOS in the previous SDK release. With all the liquid glass effect and the new update from Apple, we needed to provide you guys with the tools to start adopting these in your applications and make them look modern. But of course, now we are working on Android, the equivalent using Jetpack Compose, and For the next release, we're aiming to have a beta version for Android Compose as well. So I'm super excited for that. But in the meantime, you can start taking advantage of some of the already available APIs, but just keep in mind that it is in alpha for Android at the moment. And of course, don't forget to use Expo Glass Effect, very important at the moment, just to check if Liquid Glass is available or not, and also to create some pretty cool custom glass effect views. So I hope you liked this quick video, and I'm gonna leave all the resources in the description. Make sure to give it a like, leave me a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.